30. Wick's knees went wobbly as realization punched him full in the brain. I'm demon spawn! Ovram and Eret rushed to his side and caught him before he could hit the ground. It might have been his imagination, but Wick thought Ovram flinched as their bare hands touched his scaled hide. Tifila was at his side. The look of horror had disappeared from her face. Or maybe it was never there, you ponce. She's better than 100 of you. She hugged him to her, and he wept. Not for himself, but for any child they would have if they lived through the next few hours. Our kids are gonna have tails. It's not too bad, Tifila said, in a voice that suggested she was trying to convince herself as much as him. Lawyer, Wick said, forcing a small grin.
Yeah, why pretty lady lie? This is much better, Bluehead. No more stinky, too.
Wick glared at the imp, and then tentatively sniffed his armpit. He didn't smell much difference. Maybe a little less musky sweat and more sulfur. I have the worst damned luck.
I think it looks nice,
Eret said, with no hint of jest in his voice. Are you going to need to lie on a rock in the sun to get warm from now on? Ovram asked. Wick eyed him. Did you just make a joke? Maybe, the Zaidai said, showing no hint of humor. Wick sighed, and Tifila drew him in for another hug. If I get out of this shithole city, I'm going to dig up Cyrus's corpse and kick him into junk. Zeg's chortling laughter filled the room again.
Zeg help. Zeg likes kick ugly mortals in dangly bits.
Wick grimaced at the demonling, and then turned back to Tifila. Guess I should see what this is all about. She extended her pinky to him. Together, forever. He gripped her pinky with his own. Together, forever. He held his purple hands up, closed his eyes, and toggled his latest notification prompt open. Your exposure to Chthonic Ichor has awarded you the Chthonic trait Scales of the Demon Prince. The Chthonic realm is a place of extremes, and those who call the realm home must be hearty to survive. You now possess the trait Scales of the Demon Prince, and have gained the following powers, immunities, and/or abilities. Passive powers. Power 1. Chthonic Absorption. You now have a 100% resistance to chthonic magic. In addition, you will now absorb 50% of the chthonic magic used against you. Absorbed magic can either restore your health or your mana. Power 2. Fire Absorption. You now have a 100% resistance to natural and magical fire. In addition, you will now absorb 50% of the fire used against you. You can store this energy for up to 3 hours before it must be exhaled in the form of demon's breath. See below. Unexpurgated fire will inflict 5 damage per minute of mana damage after 3 hours. Power 3. Cold Absorption. You now have a 100% resistance to natural and magical cold. In addition, you will now absorb 50% of the cold used against you. You can store this energy for up to 3 hours before it must be exhaled in the form of demon's breath. See below. Unexpurgated cold will inflict 5 damage per minute of mana damage after 3 hours. Active powers. Active power 1. Demon's Breath. You can use part or all of the absorbed fire or cold in the form of a cone of fire or cold regurgitated via the mouth. This attack can only be used after absorbing fire or cold. Not bad, Wick thought. As far as demonic mutations went, that one wasn't all that bad, except for the purple scales. He closed the trait window and opened his specialty window once more. This had better be worth it. The stars cascaded around him once more, but this time several that had once been mere pinpricks in the darkness blazed a deep purple. Even the game mechanics were mocking him. He returned his mind to his task. Avernerius better appreciate this. Chthonic Mutation. This perk tree enables a warlock to use the power of the chthonic realm to cause a random chthonic mutation in a summoned chthonic creature or avatar. While it can enhance the combat prowess of a summoned creature, it is also erratic and therefore can be dangerous. B. Base. Base-level chthonic creatures summoned via spell or perk can be mutated. A. Apprentice. Apprentice-level chthonic creatures summoned via spell or perk can be mutated. He eyed the chthonic mutation tree for a moment before discounting it. While it could provide Avernerius with some amazing abilities, probably its complete unpredictability made its usefulness impossible to count on, and that was not something one wanted to add into the mix with demons. After a wave of his virtual hand, he moved onto the chthonic summoning perk tree. Summon Chthonic Brawler. This perk allows a warlock to summon a chthonic beast of the brawler category. Brawlers are demons of brute strength, power, and rage. They are engines of destruction. Point them at enemies and get out of the way. B. Summon Goroth. Goroth are best described as demon gorillas. A shaggy fur the color of flame and brimstone cover these massive beasts, and they bear bony protrusions on their shoulders, head, hands, and feet. They are incredibly strong and can punch their way through armor and defensive bulwarks. Their intelligence is limited and their rage is near uncontrolled. When a Goroth is summoned, the warlock must assign an enemy and the Goroth will attack without mercy, fear, or a desire for self-preservation. Goroth often throw their feces, which tend to explode, causing damage equal to the warlock's chthonic magic mastery. A. Summon Caraxen. Caraxen answer the question, what would happen if a direwolf made sweet, sweet love to a crab and then added in a dash of chthonic malevolence? These chitinous lupines are fast, deadly, and are among the best trackers in all the realms. They attack with fangs, claws, and a pair of pincer-laden arms that protrude from their shoulders. Summon Chthonic Flyer. This perk allows a warlock to summon a chthonic beast of the flyer category. Flyers are weaker than their brawler brethren, but have much greater mobility and usually possess some kind of projectile weapon. Few things in the realms are as terrifying as being descended upon from above by a host of chthonic flyers. B. Summon Volkoth. Volkoth are carrion eaters that resemble gangly humanoid vultures. Feathers made from sulfur and flame cover their wings, and their skin resembles old melted wax. Their scratch can paralyze the weak of mind with fear. They love to swoop down and rake targets with their diseased claws. Anyone scratched by a Volkoth's claws may contract chthonic rot, a leprosy-like disease that slowly turns the body to sulphurous ash while driving the victims insane. A. Summon Shadowling. Shadowlings are animated shadows of wing, dark flame, and claw. When seen, which rarely happens, they appear to be humanoid bat-like creatures. They exude ash-laden clouds of shadow and dust that blinds and chokes living creatures and causes 5 damage per second of suffocation damage. To date, all the chthonic creatures Wick had summoned had come via spell and were limited to Zeg and Avernerius. He had considered purchasing one or more of the summon perks on a number of occasions, but had always held out. Zeg was a pain in the ass on the best of days, and those were the days when Wick could still send him back to the chthonic realm. I really need to figure out why he keeps hanging around. Wick also knew Avernerius would have killed him if given the chance. Bringing more hell beasts into the mortal realms was never something to take lightly. There was another option, but first he had to decide which scary monster would provide the most aid. He inspected the chthonic avatar perk tree. Chthonic Avatar. This perk tree enables a warlock to use the power of the chthonic realm not to summon a demonic creature, but to draw their powers into an avatar. The user must already be able to summon the chthonic creature whose traits will bind to the avatar. This can be via spell or perk. B. Base. Base-level chthonic creatures summoned via spell or perk can imbue an avatar. A. Apprentice. Base-level chthonic creatures summoned via spell or perk can imbue an avatar. Note: a chthonic being summoned under the bonds of chthonic binding can act as an avatar. A plan formed in his mind. Goroth were strong demonic battering rams. That was exactly what they needed to knock down the door and save Gryph. But he did not need to summon a Goroth if he also purchased the base chthonic avatar perk. Instead, he could give the abilities of a Goroth to Avernerius. He quickly dragged 2 specialty points into Summon Goroth and Base Chthonic Avatar. He felt the expected surge of warmth and then moved on to the other perk trees. Forces of the Chthonic Realm. This perk tree allows a warlock to harness the physical forces that inhabit the chthonic realm and draw them into another realm for use as weapons. B. Tornado of Claws. Summons a hive-mind chthonic creature that takes the form of a tornado of slicing and dicing claws. The summoner must designate a target upon casting, or risk an uncontrolled tornado that attacks friend and foe alike. A. Chthonic Muck. Transforms a 20 by 20 foot area into the muck found in the fetid swamps of the chthonic realm. It acts like terrestrial quicksand, with the added nastiness of slow-burning acid and chthonic leeches. Any creature caught cannot move for 1 second per level of chthonic magic mastery. Thereafter, they are slowed by 100% minus dexterity for the rest of the spell's duration. Slow-burning acid does 1 damage per second for every 5 levels of chthonic magic mastery. Summons 1 chthonic leech for every 5 levels of chthonic magic mastery. A leech will attach itself to any creature trapped in the muck and do 1 damage per second until bloated, 100 points absorbed. Once bloated, they will explode for 50 damage each. The muck lasts 5 seconds per level of chthonic magic mastery. He'd long ago selected the Tornado of Claws perk from the Forces of the Chthonic Realm perk tree because it sounded so damn cool. He had used it only once before with mixed results because an arrow in the leg had broken his concentration and the tornado had run amok, tearing into friend and foe alike. Thonic muck sounded vile and awesome, but was not of much use in his current circumstances. He needed to power up Avernarius, not slow Mirthandir and his arachnid minions. Thonic crafting. This perk tree allows a warlock who is also a skilled crafter, alchemy, artifice, imbue, smithing, etc., to incorporate powers, creatures, and abilities from the Thonic realm into their crafted products. They must be level 10 or above in an appropriate crafting skill. B. Thonic damage. Permanent addition of Thonic damage can be added to any weapon crafted by the user. Damage, 0.25 points per level of Thonic magic mastery. A. Thonic defense. A permanent addition to the AC of any armor crafted by the user. AC bonus of 0.25 per level of Thonic magic mastery. Thonic crafting was also an easy no. Wick didn't craft, so it was useless for now. Thonic missile weapon. This perk tree allows a warlock to summon a set of Thonic missile weapons. The number of weapons summoned is equal to the user's level of Thonic magic mastery. The weapon will have various magical abilities per tier, and the user must possess a complementary skill to use the weapon. EXP, Archery level 1 plus to use Thonic bow. Uses: X times per day where X equals 1 plus Thonic magic tier mastery minus perk tier. EXP, Thonic bolt uses equal 1 plus 3 journeymen minus 1 base equals 3. B. Thonic bolt. Enables the user to fire 1 bolt of Thonic energy for every 5 levels of Thonic magic mastery. Bolts will disappear after 1 hour. Bolts do 1 point of damage per level of Thonic magic mastery. A. Thonic bow. Summons a bow made of crimson flame, smoke, and sulfur that comes with a quiver filled with 1 Thonic arrow per 3 levels of Thonic magic mastery. Unused arrow will disappear after 1 hour. Arrows do 1.5 points of damage per level of Thonic magic mastery. Now, he had long been a fan of the Thonic weapons perk Thonic Bolt, which fired a shard of Thonic energy at his enemies. He'd love to upgrade the Thonic missile tree, but since he did not possess the archery skill, he had no way of knowing what wonders lay beyond. Maybe I'll have Ovram teach me, he thought. Another thing to add to the list. He turned his attention to the Thonic melee weapons tree. Thonic melee weapon. This perk tree allows a warlock to summon Thonic melee weapons, either for oneself or for a summoned Thonic creature. The wielder must possess the requisite skill. The weapon will have various magical abilities per tier, and the user must possess a complementary skill to use the weapon. EXP, Long Blades level 1 plus to use a Thonic longsword. B. Thonic flame. Summons a weapon made from Thonic flame. The weapon does damage equal to a weapon of the same type plus 0.25 points of Thonic flame damage per level of Thonic magic mastery. A. Thonic magma. Summons a weapon made from Thonic magma that possesses all the abilities of a Thonic flame melee weapon and can melt armor, shields, and weapons, reducing their effectiveness. Each successful hit against armor or shield will reduce the effective AC by 0.1 points per level of Thonic magic mastery. This loss is permanent. Magma damage is plus 0.35 points of Thonic flame damage per level of Thonic magic mastery. Wick had used his first specialty perk point to buy Avernarius a nice shining sword of flame. The Abyssal Terror was terror with the weapon. Wick bought the perk and chuckled like a boy opening a present on his naming day. I'm gonna fuck you up, Mirthandir, Wick thought with a mental grin, and examined his chthonic subskill trees. Satisfied that his efforts would help save Gryph, and horrified at what they had cost him, Wick closed out all his windows and opened his eyes. He nearly fell over, dizzy from the effort of tying his soul closer to the chthonic realm, but Eret caught him by the scruff of his shoulder. Tifila looked into his eyes like a battlefield doctor inspecting a wounded soldier. I'm fine, my love. Did it work? Ovram asked. Let's find out. Wick downed a double dose of mana potions and waited for the bar to refill. Then he spread his arms wide and closed his eyes. A low chanting murmured up around them. Wick had always found it odd that when he chanted the words, they both came from him and from elsewhere. He tried and failed to find the origin of the sound for the 100th time. The chanting reached a crescendo, and a loud voice that both was and was not Wick's exploded from his mouth. Avernarius, I summon thee! The room filled with the sound of tearing, as if 1,000 upon 1,000 sheets of paper were being shorn in half. A singularity of crimson and smoke popped into existence a dozen feet in front of Wick. It pulsed and spun, crackling with energy. Wick felt a deep sense of unease build inside him as the light of another plane of existence flowed over and through him. He knew the chthonic realm was a living entity that held a deep malevolence for beings from the mortal realms, but this somehow felt different. The single point of light expanded vertically, and then that slice between dimensions expanded into a doorway to the abyss. Distant cracks of yellow lightning surged through clouds the color of an old bruise, casting illumination on a writhing mass of demonic life. Amid the roiling sea of arms, legs, tentacles, and other unidentifiable appendages, a massive demon raced toward them. A grim look of satisfaction crossed Wick's face as he saw the changes Avernarius had gone through. It stood several feet taller than he remembered, and its horns had grown several feet, curling inward like a ram's. They burned in a corona of chthonic flames. "Don't look it in the eyes," Wick warned as the beast reached the threshold between realms, and the others turned their gazes down. The demon passed through the field. Then it flipped like a mirror image, pulling the demon into this realm where it smashed full on into the massive stone doors. The doors rumbled and shook, but otherwise held. The demon flexed its hands, and Wick noted the large plates of stony bone covering the knuckles. They sprouted spines and barbs, which not only protected the demon's fists, but added an extra oomph to its punches. Dust and fragments of stone fell from the ceiling as the demon's impacts sent shivers through the entire mountain. The noise was deafening, and after a moment, thin cracks appeared in the stone of the door. Eret stood gaping at the demon, something between excitement and fear emanating from him. He reached out a tentative hand to touch Avernarius when Zeg ported onto his shoulder and smacked his arm, for all the world looking like a sheepherder disciplining his dog. The Warborn looked up at the tiny imp, and Zeg shook his head in warning. Eret frowned and turned his eyes downward like a chastised child and backed away from the indefatigable demon. More hairline cracks appeared in the surface of the door, and Avernarius focused his fury on the largest of them. The crack grew wider, and light poured from the fissure. The demon brought its fist back and pummeled it into the doorway. An explosion tore through the room, tossing Avernarius backwards. The force knocked everyone off their feet. Eret was the first to stand, and grinned his thanks at Zeg, knowing the demonling had likely saved his life. Ovrim helped Wick up, but he collapsed back onto one knee as a trickle of blood dripped from his nose. Tifila rushed to his side, taking his head in her hands. A swirl of green light flowed around them and into Wick's body, staunching the flow of blood. "Are you sure you have control over this thing?" Ovrim said, voice tense. "I think so," Wick said through gritted teeth. "He is very strong." He waved his hand, telling everyone to move back. Avernarius regained his feet, unfazed by the explosion, and he lowered his head and charged the door. His ram-like horns punched into the stone, and the crack in the door expanded. The light inside grew dim, and then faded altogether. The demon redoubled its efforts, and soon large chunks of the door crumbled to the floor. The noise was deafening, and just as Wick was sure his hearing would never be the same, the demon stopped. Its breath came ragged, each exhalation pumping smoke and sulfur into the room. Then a silence descended on the room, made more potent by the sudden absence of sound. Wick thought the demon had given up, but then it extended its left hand outward, and a hilt of golden magma appeared in its hand, and a blade of fire and smoke exploded upwards, its brightness forcing everyone to shield their eyes.